which frequency table correctly represents the data listed? So up here is our data, and in this data the number 4 appears 4 times, the number 8 appears 3 times, and the number 13 appears 2 times. So the frequency table should look something like this. So answer choice A says that the number 4 appears 4 times, which is correct. The number 8 appears 3 times, which is also correct. And that the number 13 appears 2 times, which is also correct. So answer choice A looks correct so far. Answer choice B is incorrect because it says that the number 3 appears 8 times, but the number 3 does not appear at all. So answer choice B is incorrect. Answer choice C says that the number 4 appears 16 times, which is incorrect because the number 4 only appears 4 times. So answer choice C is incorrect. Answer choice D says that the number 16 appears 4 times, which is incorrect because the number 16 doesn't appear at all. So answer choice D is incorrect, which means answer choice A is the correct answer. Which expression is equivalent to x squared plus 3x minus 40? So by looking at the answer choices, we can see that they want us to factor this quadratic. This quadratic is the form ax squared plus bx plus c. In order to factor this, we have to split the b term into 2 smaller b terms, where b1 plus b2 is equal to the original b, and b1 times b2 is equal to a times c, where a is the coefficient of the second degree term and c is the constant. So in this case, a times c is equal to 1 times negative 40, which is just negative 40. And the only 2 numbers that satisfy these 2 conditions are 8 and negative 5, because 8 minus 5 is equal to 3, and 8 times negative 5 is equal to negative 40. So when we split the b term into 8x minus 5x, we are left with this: x squared plus 8x minus 5x minus 40. So then we can factor out an x from these first 2 terms here. And for the second 2 terms, we can factor out a negative 5. Now we see that the quantity x plus 8 is common to both of these 2 terms here. So we can take out an x plus 8 common from both. And so then we're left with this expression right here, which is equal to answer choice B. So answer choice B is correct. Jay walks at a speed of 3 miles per hour and runs at a speed of 5 miles per hour. He walks for W hours and runs for R hours, for a combined total of 14 miles. Which equation represents this situation? So distance is equal to the velocity times the time. So in this case, Jay walks at a speed of 3 miles per hour for W hours. So this will give us the distance that he walked. And then he runs at a speed of 5 miles per hour for a total of R hours. This will give us the distance that he ran. So adding these 2 distances together gives us the total distance, which is 14, right here. So this equation represents this situation, which is answer choice number A. In triangle ABC, the measure of angle B is 52 degrees. The measure of angle C is 17 degrees. What is the measure of angle A? Okay, so let's draw triangle ABC. Here, let's make this up here angle A, this angle B, and this angle C. So angle B is 52 degrees. Angle C is 17 degrees. And since all the angles in the triangle, in any triangle, must add up to 180 degrees, this angle right here, angle A, is equal to 180 minus the sum of the other two angles. So 52 plus 17, which is equal to 180 minus 69, which is equal to 111 degrees. So angle A has to be 111 degrees, which is answer choice D. The graph represents the total charge in dollars by an electrician for X hours of work. The electrician charges a one-time fee plus an hourly rate. What is the best interpretation of the slope of the graph? So the total charge is represented on this graph, which means that the y-axis represents the total charge, while the x-axis tells us the hours of work. And we can see that this line is a linear line, so its equation is of the form y equals mx plus b. In this case, since the electrician charges a one-time fee, the y-intercept is equal to the one-time fee, which is equal to the value of b. So b is the one-time fee. And then the amount charged per hour is going to be the coefficient of x, because every time x increases by 1, the value of y increases by m. So m here is equal to the hourly rate. And for equations of the form y equals mx plus b for a straight line, the slope, which is the value of m, which is the coefficient of the independent variable, which is x in this case, or the hours worked. So m here is the hourly rate, which is the slope of this line. So the best interpretation of the slope is that the slope is the electrician's hourly rate. So the answer is A. The table summarizes the distribution of color and shape for 100 tiles of equal area. If one of these tiles is selected at random, what is the probability of selecting a red tile? So the probability of a simple event is the number of desired outcomes divided by the total outcomes. So the number of desired outcomes in this case is selecting one red tile, and there's a total of 30 red tiles. These columns right here in the table show how many tiles are each color. So there are, for example, 30 red tiles, 30 blue tiles, and 40 yellow tiles, which add up to 100 total tiles. So the number of desired outcomes is 30, which is selecting any one of the 30 red tiles, divided by the total number of outcomes, which is selecting any colored tile out of the 100, which is 100, since we have 100 total tiles. So 30 divided by 100 is the probability of selecting a red tile, which is equal to 3 out of 10, or 0.3. And both of these are acceptable solutions to the question. From a population of 50,000 people, 1,000 were chosen at random and surveyed about a proposed piece of legislation. Based on the survey, it is estimated that 35% of people in the population support the legislation. with an associated margin of error of 3%. Based on these results, which of the following is a plausible value for the total number of people in the population who support the proposed legislation? So to find the total number of people that support the legislation, we just extrapolate the trend in the survey of 1,000 people and apply that to the whole population of 50,000 people. So 35% of people in the survey supported the legislation, which means 35% of 50,000 people should give us how many people support the legislation in the total population. So 35% of 50,000, if we put that into our calculator, is 0.35 times 50,000, which is equal to 17,500. So 17,500 is 35% of 50,000, but that's not one of the answer choices because there's a margin of error in the survey of 3%. So the value would fluctuate up or down 3% based on this margin of error. So the closest choice to 17,500 would be the most plausible value for the number of people that support the legislation. The other answer choices, 350, 650, 31,000, are well away from 17,500. So they wouldn't be in the 3% margin. Only C would. So C is the answer. What is the positive solution to the given equation? Okay, so this equation right here, we can simplify this down to 55 equals x times x plus 6 by taking this denominator down here and multiplying it to the other side. So now that we have this, we can just distribute this x right here. So 55 equals x squared plus 6x. And then we can move this 55 over to the other side so that we can get this quadratic equation right here. X squared plus 6x minus 55 equals 0. So in order to solve this equation for x, we can factor this by grouping. So 55 is equal to 11 times 5. So 55 is equal to 11 times 5. And the 6 here is equal to 11 minus 5. And 11 times negative 5 is equal to negative 55. So that's how we know that we can factor this by grouping, by looking at the factors of the a term, which in this case is just a 1, multiplied with the c term, which is negative 55. And the factors of negative 55 can be added together to equal 6. So 0 equals x squared plus 11x minus 5x minus 55. So then we can factor out an x from these first two terms, and we can factor out a negative 5 from the second two terms. So now we see that the quantity x plus 11 is common to both, so we can factor that out as well. And we see that x plus 11 quantity times x minus 5 is the factored form of this equation here. So from this we can easily see that when x is equal to negative 11, this quantity right here, negative 11 plus 11, will equal 0, which satisfies the equation because 0 equals 0. And we see here that x equals 5 is a solution as well, because when x equals 5, 5 minus 5 is 0, so this whole quantity becomes 0, which also satisfies the equation. Now the question asks us for the positive solution. So we have two solutions here, but only one of them is positive. So we're going to use this positive solution here, x equals 5, as our answer. So x equals 5 is the solution. An airplane descends from an altitude of 9,500 feet to 5,000 feet at a constant rate of 400 feet per minute. Which type of function best models the relationship between the descending airplane's altitude and time? So we can think of the function as a function of time, and this function will give us the altitude. So we'll put time on the x-axis and the altitude on the y-axis. So here it says that the airplane descends at a constant rate of 400 feet per minute. Since it's a constant rate of descending, we can conclude that the function has to be a linear function. So we can eliminate these exponential functions right here. Now we're left between a decreasing linear and an increasing linear. Now the question said that the function is descending because the altitude is descending with respect to time, which means that the altitude is going down. So here it's going from 9,500 feet to 5,000 feet, which means the function will have a negative slope, which means it's a linear function that will be going down. So the altitude will be decreasing. So it can't be a linear increasing function because we need the altitude to be going down. So the function that best models this would be a decreasing linear function. That would look something like this. If the given function g is graphed in the xy plane, where y equals g of x, what is the y-intercept of the graph? So here is g of x, which is equal to y, and in order to find the y-intercept, we need to solve for the value of y when x is equal to 0, because the y-intercept occurs when x is equal to 0. So when we set x equal to 0, we get this equation, 11 times 1 over 12 raised to the 0th power, which simplifies to 11 times 1, since anything raised to the 0th power is equal to 1, so y just equals 11. So the y-intercept is where x equals 0, which is all of these answer choices here, and the y value is equal to 11. So the answer choice A is correct. The circle shown has center O, circumference 144 pi, and diameters PR and QS. The length of arc PS is twice the length of arc PQ. What is the length of arc QR? So we're given that the total circumference is 144 pi, that these two lines right here are diameters, and we're trying to find the length of arc QR, which is this arc right here, going from Q to R. So since we know that QS right here is a diameter, this means that the arc that it defines is equal to half the circumference. So this arc going from S to Q is 72 pi, which is half of 144 pi. And using that, we can create a system of equations to find the length of arc PQ. So we know that the length of arc SP, let's call that X, and the length of arc PQ, let's call that Y. Those lengths added together should equal 72 pi. And we also know that the length of arc PS is twice the length of arc PQ. So PS here is X. So X is equal to 2 times Y. Since Y is PQ and X is PS, PS here is twice the length of PQ. So then we can substitute 2y into this equation for x. So if we plug in 2y as x, and then the rest of the equation, we can solve for y. So y here, so 3y equals 72 pi. And so 72 divided by 3 is equal to 24 pi. So here, the length of arc PQ is equal to 24 pi. Now, in order to find the length of arc QR, we know that PR here is also a diameter, which means that the total length of this arc that goes from P to R is also 72 pi. So if we say that the length of arc QR is equal to Z, then Y plus Z is equal to 72 pi. But we know that Y is equal to 24 pi. So if we plug that in, we get that 24 pi plus Z is equal to 72 pi. And so if we subtract 24 pi to the other side, we get that Z is equal to 48 pi. And Z in this case is the length of our QR. So Z is the length of our QR, so the answer is 48 pi. A rectangle has a length of x units and a width of x minus 15 units. If the rectangle has an area of 76 square units, what is the value of x? So we have a rectangle which has a length of x units and a width of x minus 15 units. The area of this rectangle is 76 square units. So the area of a rectangle is equal to the length times the width. So in this case, 76 is equal to the length, which is x, and the width, which is equal to x minus 15. So this is the formula for the area of this square, our rectangle. We can use this formula to solve for x, which is what the question is asking us for. So 76 is equal to, we can distribute out this x to get x squared minus 15x, and then we can subtract 76 from both sides to get 0 equals x squared minus 15x minus 76. And then we can split this x term here, this negative 15x, into two terms whose coefficients, when multiplied together, equals 1 times negative 76. So in this case, it would be 0 equals x squared minus 19x plus 4x minus 76. So we just split this 15 here, this negative 15, into negative 19x plus 4x, which just equals negative 15x. But now, negative 19 times 4 is equal to negative 76. This will allow us to factor this by grouping. So we can just take an x common out from these two terms. So x minus 19. And then from these two terms, we can factor out a 4. So 4 times x minus 19. And then we see that x minus 19, that quantity is common to both these terms, so we can factor that out as well. So x minus 19 times x plus 4. Okay, and then we'll have two solutions to this equation. So x will equal 19, or x equals negative 4. Because plugging in 19 to x here will give us 0, which will make the whole equation 0, which satisfies the equation. And the same for when x is negative 4, it'll make this quantity 0, which when multiplied with this will also be 0. But since x is negative 4 here, this solution doesn't make any sense because we're dealing with distances. The length or width of a rectangle cannot be negative, so we're just going to disregard that solution and take x equals 19 as the solution. So the answer is B. So Rosa opened a savings account at a bank. The table shows the exponential relationship between time t in years since Rosa opened the bank and the total amount n in dollars in the account. If Rosa made no additional deposits or withdrawals, which of the following equation best represents the relationship between t and n? So the question tells us that there's an exponential relationship between the time and the total amount of dollars. So our equation will look something like this, a normal exponential equation. So we can use the values in the table to eliminate incorrect answers and see which one is correct. So at time t equals 0, the total amount of dollars, n, should be 104. So if we plug in t equals 0 into this first equation, we're going to get 1 plus 604 raised to the 0th power. And we know that anything raised to the 0th power, in this case 605, is just equal to 1, which is incorrect because after the 0 years, the total amount of dollars in the account should be 604, not 1. And the same for answer choice B. When we plug in 0 for time, we get 1 again, which is incorrect, so we can rule that out. Okay, so for answer choice C, when we plug in times t equals 0, we get 604 times 1 plus 0.004 raised to the 0th power. And this quantity right here, 1 raised to the 0th power, which will just be 1, and then 1 times 604 is just equal to 604. So that's correct. So C is potentially a correct answer. And then we can plug in 0 again for answer choice D. And similar to what we had before, we'll just get 0.004 times 1 plus 604 raised to the 0th power. When we plug 0 for time here, this quantity just becomes 1, and so we're just left with 0.004, which is incorrect. We need it to equal $604 in the bank account after 0 years. So the only answer choice that could possibly be correct is answer choice C. At how many points do the graphs of the equations y equals x plus 20 and y equals 8x intersect in the xy plane? So to find the points where these two graphs intersect, we can find where the y values equal each other. So we have y equals x plus 20 and y equals 8x. So we want to find where the y values and the x values equal each other. So where the y values equal each other, we can just set these two equations equal to each other. So x plus 20 is equal to 8x, where this equation went here and this one went here. And then we can solve for the value of x that makes the y values equal to each other. So we can move this x to the other side by subtracting it for both equations. So 20 equals 7x. So then x is equal to 20 over 7. So at the value x equals 20 over 7, the y values equal each other. And in this case, the y values would equal, if we just plug in x equals 20 over 7 into this equation, we would just get 160 over 7. So at x equals 20 over 7 and y equals 160 over 7, the two equations intersect. And since that's only one intersection point that we found, these two equations only intersect at one point, which makes sense because these two equations are the equations of lines, and lines on a plane can only intersect at one point. See, if this was the xy plane, these two equations would look something like this. And it would only be possible for them to intersect at one point or not intersect at all. At a school fair, students can win color tokens that are worth a different number of points depending on the color. One student won G green tokens and R red tokens worth a total of 380 points. The given equation represents the situation. How many more points is a red token worth more than a green token? So in this equation, 5G plus 45R equals 380. This equation gives us the total number of points as a function of the number of green and red tokens. So in order to get the total number of points, we need to multiply the value of a token, or how many points it has, times the number of tokens. So here, 5 is the number of points for a green token, and 45 is also the number of points for a red token. Because multiplying 5 with the number of green tokens will give us the total points from green tokens, and multiplying 45 with R, the number of red tokens, will give us the total number of points from red tokens. So a red token is worth 45 points, and a green token is worth 5 points. So that means a red token is worth 40 more points than a green token. So 40 is the answer. The number of bacteria in a liquid medium doubles every day. There are 44,000 bacteria in the liquid medium at the start of the observation, which represents the number of bacteria Y in the liquid medium T days after the start of the observation. Since the number of bacteria doubles every day, we are dealing with an exponential function, which will look something like this, where Y is the number of bacteria, A is some constant, B is some constant, and T is the number of days after the start of the observation, and the independent variable here. So, since there are 44,000 bacteria at the start, this means that when time t is equal to 0, which is the start of the observation, the number of bacteria, y, should equal 44,000. So we can just plug that into these equations. When t is equal to 0 here, we get 1/2 times 44,000 raised to the 0. Any quantity raised to the 0 power is equal to 1. So this will just reduce to 1/2 times 1, which is just equal to 1/2, which is incorrect because there should be 44,000 bacteria at the start of the observation when time t equals 0. Okay, so if we look at the second option here, when we plug in 0 for t, we get 2, because 44,000 raised to the 0 power is just 1, and that multiplied with 2 just gives us 2, which is also incorrect. And then for c here, we get 44,000 times 1/2 raised to the 0. So 1/2 raised to the 0 power is just equal to 1, and 1 times 44,000 is 44,000, which is correct, since there are 44,000 bacteria at the start of the observation. And then same for answer choice D, we get 44,000 as well, because 2 raised to the 0 is just 1, and 44,000 times 1 is just 44,000. So we're left with answer choice C and D. So now we can check how many bacteria there should be on day 1. After 1 day of observation, the number of bacteria should have doubled. So on day 1, the number of bacteria should be 88,000. So if we plug in this time t equals 2 or t equals 1, we get 44,000 times 1/2, because 1/2 raised to the first power is just 1/2, and this will give us 22,000, or 22,000, which is incorrect because the number of bacteria was supposed to double, not half. Okay, and then if we plug in t equals 1 into d here, we get 44,000 times 2, which is equal to 88,000, which is correct because the number of bacteria after 1 day should have doubled to 88,000. So when t equals 1, d is true, and which means d is the only correct answer left, so d is the correct answer. A cylinder has a diameter of 8 inches and a height of 12 inches. What is the volume in cubic inches of the cylinder? So we have a cylinder which looks something like this. The radius up here of the cylinder is 4 inches, not 8 inches. The diameter of this circle up here is 8 inches, so the radius is half that, which is 4 inches. The height of this cylinder is 12 inches. So then we can just use the formula for the volume of a cylinder, which is just pi r squared times the height. This part right here, the pi r squared, is just the area of the circle on top, and then we multiplied it by the height, which is kind of like stacking a bunch of small circles or discs for this much height, which gives us the area, the volume of this cylinder. So then we can just plug in our values. So pi times 4 squared times the height. So 4 squared is 16, and 16 times 12 is 192. So we get 192 pi for the area of this cylinder, which is just answer choice C. The solution to the given system of equations is xy. What is the value of y? Okay, so they're really just asking us to find the y value of the solution to this system of equations. So we can solve this system of equation by elimination. So we can multiply the second equation here by 3 to eliminate x. So when we multiply the second equation by 3, we get 6x plus 6y equals 30. And then we can subtract one equation from the other. So when we subtract this equation from that equation, we do 6x minus 6x, which is just 0. Then 7y minus 6y, which is just 1y. And then 28 minus 30, which is negative 2. This leaves us with y equals negative 2. And we could keep going and solve for the value of x by plugging this y value back into one of these equations and finding the value of x. But the question only asks us for the value of y, so we found that here. So the answer is just A, y equals negative 2. In triangle JKL, cosine of k equals 24/51, and angle J is a right angle. What is the value of cosine L? Okay, so this right triangle looks something like this. We'll make the right angle here, angle J, this K, and this L. The question tells us that the cosine of K is 24/51, so we can just use that as the length of our sides. So cosine of K is adjacent. We'll make this 24 over the hypotenuse. So that'll be 51. Using this given to us in the question right here. And then to find the cosine of angle L, we need to find the length of this side right here. We'll call it x. So to find the length of x right here, we'll use the Pythagorean theorem, which says that x squared plus 24 squared equals 51 squared. The sum of the square of the two sides equals the square of the hypotenuse. So we can just isolate for x by moving the 24 square to the other side and taking the square root of that. So if we plug this into our calculator, we'll get that x equals 45. So the length of this side right here is 45. Then the cosine of L is just the adjacent side divided by the hypotenuse. So cosine of L is 45 over 51, which is the answer, 45 over 51. The given equation defines the function f. For what values of x does f of x reach its minimum? Okay, so this function here is a quadratic since the highest degree of the x value is 2. And since the x squared term has a positive number or coefficient in front of it, this means that this quadratic is concave up, which means that the vertex of this graph is the minimum value. So really, in order to find the minimum value of the function f of x, we just need to find where the vertex occurs. And the vertex for any quadratic is equal to negative b over 2a, where the b value is the coefficient of the x term and a is the coefficient of the x squared term. So in this case, the value of the vertex, the x value, is equal to negative 50 over 2 times 4, which is just 8, which is just equal to 50 over 8, or 25 over 4, which is the answer. In the xy plane, line L passes through the point 0, 0 and is parallel to the line represented by the equation y equals 8x plus 2. If line L also passes through the point 3D, what is the value of D? Okay, so we have a line L that passes through the point 0, 0 and is parallel to the equation, this right here. Since it is parallel to this equation, it means that the slope is just equal to the slope of the line it's parallel to. So if this equation is y equals 8x plus 2, then the line parallel to it also has the same slope, the m equals 8. Okay, so that gives us the slope of the equation, of the line L. Now we need the y-intercept in order to create a full equation. And it tells us here that it passes through the point 0, 0, which means that at the x value, when the x value is equal to 0, the y value is also equal to 0, which means this line L has a y-intercept of 0. So the equation of line L is y equals 8x. And using that, we can just find the value of D when x is equal to 3. So when we plug in x is equal to 3, we just get that y equals 24, which means that D equals 24, since D is the value of y when x equals 3. So we can just plug that into our equation for L. So the answer is 24. In the xy plane, a line with equation 2y equals c for some constant c intersects a parabola at exactly one point. If the parabola has equation y equals negative 2x squared plus 9x, what is the value of c? Okay, so this parabola right here is a concave down parabola because the coefficient of the x squared term is negative. And this line, 2y equals c, we can simplify that to 2y equals c over 2. And this is just a horizontal line in the xy plane because c is just some constant. So y equals c over 2 is just some horizontal line. Depending on the value of c, it's just some one of the lines like this. So, and in order for a horizontal line, like y equals c over 2, to cross a parabola at exactly one point, the line must intersect at the vertex. Because if this line intersected somewhere other than the vertex, like down here, then it would cross the parabola at 2 points instead of 1. And if it crossed up here, well, it wouldn't really cross at all. There would be no points of intersection. So the line, or horizontal line, must cross the parabola at the vertex if it has to cross at 1 point only. And we can find the point at the vertex to be able to solve for the value of c. So the x value of the vertex of a parabola, the x value at the vertex, is equal to negative b over 2a, where b is the coefficient of the x term and a is the coefficient of the x squared term. So in this case it's just negative 9 over 2 times negative 2, which is just negative 4, which we can just simplify to 9 over 4. Okay, so this is the x value of the vertex, which is the point where they intersect. And we can find the y value at the point that they intersect by just plugging this into this equation. So the y value when x equals 9 over 4, we can just find that using the equation of the parabola. So negative 2 times 9 over 4 whole squared. So negative 2 times 81 over 16 plus 81 over 4, which is just, this is just equal to negative 81 over 8. 2 over 16 is just 1 over 8, and then that multiplied with 81 is just negative 81 over 8 plus 81 over 4. And if we do some fraction math, we get that this is just equal to 81 over 8. So the y value at this vertex is equal to 81 over 8, which means the y value of the line should also be 81 over 8 since they intersect at this point. So for the equation y equals c over 2, the y value should be 81 over 8, and that should be equal to c over 2. So then if we multiply this 2 to the other side, we get that c is equal to 81 over 4, and that's the answer. 81 over 4 is the value of c. Which expression is equivalent to 9x squared plus 7x squared plus 9x? So this question, we just add together like terms. So the two x squared terms here. So 9 plus 17 is 16. So 16x squared plus 9x. And that's all the simplification we can really do. And this is just answer choice D. Of 900,000 beads, 828,000 are silver. What percentage of the beads are silver? So to find the percentage of silver beads, we just divide the number of silver beads by the total beads. So that'll be 828,000 divided by 900,000, which is just equal to 0.92 if you plug that into your calculator. And 0.92 is just 92%. So for every 100 bead, 92 of them are silver. And that is answer choice D. If 2 times the quantity 3t minus 10 plus t equals 40 plus 4t, what is the value of 3t? Okay, so we can just expand out this quantity here. So we get 6t minus 20 plus t equals 40 plus 4t. And then we can just combine like terms. So 6t plus t is 7t. And let's move this 20 to the other side. So we get 60 plus t, 4t. And then we can move this 4t back to the other side. So we'll get 3t equals 60 here. And then the question asks us for the value of 3t, not just t. So here 3t equals 60. So our answer is 60. If 5 times the quantity x plus 4 equals 4 times the quantity x plus 4 plus 29, what is the value of x plus 4? Okay, so we only need the value of x plus 4, so we can subtract the quantity 4 times x plus 4 from both sides in order to cancel out this x times the quantity x plus 4. So if we subtract this from both sides of the equation, on the left hand side we'll just be left with 1 x times x plus 4 equal to 0, since 4 times x plus 4 minus 4 times x plus 4 is just 0, and we'll just be left with the 29. So this tells us that x plus 4 just equals 29, which is answer choice C. A neighborhood consists of a 2-hectare park and a 35-hectare residential area. The total number of trees in the neighborhood is 3,934. The equation 2x plus 35y equals 3,934 represents this situation. Which of the following is the best interpretation of x in this context? So since this equation, 2x plus 35y equals 3,934 represents the equation, so this quantity right here is the number of trees, which means that these two quantities added together should equal the total number of trees. And here we're given that there's a 2-hectare park and a 35-hectare residential area. So this should represent the number of trees in the park, since it's showing the 2-hectare park here and then the 35-hectare hectare residential area. Number of trees in residential area. So this, right, the coefficient here shows the size of the area, the 2-hectare park and the 35-hectare residential area. And in order to get the trees from that, we need to know the number of trees, or average number of trees per hectare. And when we multiply that with the size of the area, we get the total number of trees there. So this quantity right here, the x, must be the average number of trees per hectare, because when we multiply that with the size of the area, we get the number of trees in that area, which we add with the number of trees in the residential area to get the total number of trees. So A has to be the correct answer. For a certain rectangular region, the ratio of its length to its width is 35 to 10. If the width of this rectangular region increases by 7 units, how must the length change to maintain this ratio? So we have a rectangle whose length is 35 units and its width is 10 units. And we can express this ratio as length over width. So 35 over 10. And what happens to this ratio is that the width, 10, increases by 7 units. So we get 17 over some new length, length 2. And this ratio has to be equal since the ratio is maintained. So length 2 changes accordingly to ensure that they're equal. So to solve this, we can just cross multiply like this. So 35 times 17 equals 10 times L2. And then to solve for L2, we can just divide both sides by 10. So 35 times 17 over 10. This is multiplication here. And if we plug that into our calculator, we get that L2 equals 59.5. And the original length was 35. So our length increased by 24.5 in order to maintain the ratio after we increase the width. So the correct answer has to be B. The given equation relates the numbers p and n, where n is not equal to 0 and p is greater than 9. Which equation correctly expresses n in terms of p? So we have this equation, p equals 9 plus 14 over n. And we just need to solve for n in terms of p. So we just need to isolate n. So first we can move the 9 to the other side by subtracting 9 from both sides. So p minus 9 equals 14 over n. And then we can multiply both sides by n. So we'll get n times p minus 9 equals 14. And then we want to get n alone, so we can divide both sides by p minus 9. So we'll get n equals 14 over p minus 9, which is equal to answer choice number D, or answer choice D. The expression 24 over 6x plus 42 is equal to 4 over x plus b, where b is a constant. What is the value of b? So to simplify from this to this, we can just cancel out some common coefficients and then see what the value of b is. So we're left, so we have 24 over 6x plus 42. So we can simplify this to 6 times 4 over 6x plus 6 times 7. So we see here that the number 6 is common to all of these terms. So we can just cancel that out. So just cancel out 6 from all of it. And we're left with 4 over x plus 7. And this is the same as this expression here, except we can see that the b is actually 7 now. So the value of b is 7, A. Circle A in the xy plane has this equation. Circle B has the same center as circle A. The radius of circle B is 2 times the radius of circle A. The equation defining circle B in the xy plane is this, where k is constant. What is the value of k? So circle A is a circle in the xy plane whose radius is equal to 2, because this equation for a circle is x minus h whole squared plus y minus k whole squared equals r squared, where r is the radius. So here 4 is equal to 2 squared. So this is like r squared. So here the radius is 2. The radius is not 4. And then circle B is circle with the same center. Here, let me draw a better circle. But its radius, let's call it big R, is twice the radius of circle A. So the radius is 4. But since the equation for a circle says that on the right hand side there is an r squared, we have to square this value. So k is going to equal 16, because the radius squared, 4 squared, is 16, using the equation of a circle. So the value of k is 16, not 4. A business owner plans to purchase the same model chair for each of the 28 employees. The total budget to spend on these chairs is $14,000, which includes a 7% sales tax. Which of the following is closest to the maximum possible price per chair before sales tax the business owner could pay based on this budget? So the business owner has 81 employees, and he's buying one chair for all of them. So 81 times P, the price of a chair, gives us the total cost of the chairs. But we also have to account for the sales tax. So to account for that, we can multiply by 1.07. this would apply a 7% sales tax. So this cannot equal or cannot exceed $14,000. So to find the maximum price per chair that we can spend, we have to find a value of P such that we get right up to the budget of $14,000. So now we can just solve for the value of P. So if we isolate for P by dividing both sides by 81 times 1.07, so it'll look something like this. 81 times 1.07. We just divided both sides by the product of 81 and 1.07, and if we simplify that down, we'll get 161.53. So the maximum price we can spend on one chair is 161.53 before sales tax. So that's answer choice B. The graphs of the equations in the given system of equations intersect at the point xy in the xy plane. What is a possible value of x? So we're given these two equations here, and in order to find the value of x where they intersect, we can just graph these in Desmos and see the point of intersection. So here is the graph of these two functions. I've put them both into Desmos. I've isolated for y. So in the first equation, I move this 8x to the other side by subtracting 8x from both sides. And then in the second one, I just moved the 341 to the other side by subtracting 341 from both sides. So when we graph these, one is a line and the other is a parabola. We just look at the points of intersection. So here they intersect at -15 and 109, so that's just the xy coordinates. So the x coordinate at this point of intersection is -15, and the xy coordinates of the other point of intersection are 11, -99. So the two possible values of x are -15 and 11. And the only answer choice that has one of these is answer choice A. So -15 is a possible value for the value of x at a point of intersection. How many solutions does this equation have? So we can just start simplifying this down. 10 times 15x is 150x, minus 10 times 9, which is 90, is equal to -15 times 6, which is equal to -90 again. And then -15 times -10 is equal to 150x. And then we can see here that both sides of these equations are equal. So if we try to isolate for x, say by subtracting -50x to the other side, we would just get 0, and we'd just be left with -90 equals -90. And this is always true, which means that no matter the value of x, no matter what value you set to x, both sides of the equation will always be true. Which means this equation, the system of this equation, has infinitely many solutions. You can set x to be any value, and both sides of the equation will always be equal to each other. When the quadratic function f is graphed in the xy plane, where y equals f of x, its vertex is -3, 6. One of the x-intercepts of this graph is -17/4, 0. What is the other x-intercept of the graph? So we have a parabola, the graph of the quadratic f of x, and its vertex down here is -3, 6. One of its x-intercepts is this coordinate here, the -17/4, 0. And the other x-intercept is what we have to find. So its coordinate will look like some constant k, 0. Since it's on the x-axis, the y value is always 0. And we can use the fact that this distance here from one of the x-intercepts to the vertex is always equal to the distance from the vertex to the other x-intercept, which is saying that the vertex is in between the two x-intercepts. So to find the distance from the x distance between the x-intercept and the vertex. We just need to find the difference between negative 17 over 4 and negative 3. So negative 17 over 4 minus negative 3 is equal to negative 17 plus 12 over 4. We just, these two negative signs just became a plus sign, and I just changed the 3 over 1 to 12 over 4, which is just equivalent to 3, but now they have the same denominator, so we can add them together. So negative 17 plus 12 is equal to negative 5 over 4. And that's the negative distance, so the real distance is just 5 over 4, since distance can't be a negative value. So this distance between this x-intercept and the vertex is 5 over 4, and that means so is this distance. So in order to find the value of x here, we can just add 5 over 4 to negative 3. So negative 3 plus 5 over 4 is equal to negative 12 plus 5 over 4, which is equal to negative 7 over 4. So I just turned this negative 3 into negative 12 over 4, and that allows us to add these two terms together, since now they have a common denominator. So the value of x at the x-intercept is going to be negative 7 over 4. And the y value will just be 0, since it's an x-intercept. So that's answer choice number, or answer choice B. The graph of y equals f of x plus 14 is shown. Which equation defines function f? Okay, so this graph here shows us a line that has a y-intercept at a y value of 2. So y equals 2 at the y-intercept for this graph. And the question asks us to find the equation of function f. But f of x is equal to y minus 14. So here, the function y is equal to f of x plus 14, but we can just solve for f of x by moving this 14 to the other side. So y minus 14 equals f of x. So the y-intercept of f of x should be 14 units lower than the y-intercept of y. So 2 minus 14 is negative 12. And the only function here in the answer choices that has a y-intercept of negative 12 is a. In the given equation, b is a constant. For which of the following values of b will the equation have more than one real solution? So to see how many solutions a quadratic has, we can calculate the discriminant, which is equal to b squared minus 4ac, where b is the coefficient of the x term, which is coincidentally also b here. A is the coefficient of the x squared term, and c is the constant. So the discriminant here is equal to b squared minus 4 times 64 times 25, which is equal to b squared minus 6400. And a quadratic has two solutions when the discriminant is greater than 0. So in this case, when b squared is greater than 6400. And there are two possible solutions for b, when b is greater than 80, or when b is less than negative 80. So b has to be either greater than 80 or less than negative 80 for b squared to be greater than 6400. This will give us a positive discriminant, which means the quadratic will have two solutions, which is more than one. So the only answer choice that fits one of these two requirements is answer choice A, since it is less than negative 80. The graph of 7x plus 2y equals negative 31 in the xy plane has an x-intercept at a comma 0 and a y-intercept at 0 comma b, where a and b are constants. What is the value of b over a? So this graph right here, we can just solve for the x and y intercepts to find the values of a and b and then divide them. So for the x-intercept, we need to solve for the value of x when y equals 0. So when y equals 0, we're left with 7x equals negative 31, since 2 times 0 is just 0. So then x equals negative 31 over 7. And then for the y-intercept, we need to solve for the value of y when x is equal to 0. So when x is equal to 0, 7 times 0 is 0, and we're just left with 2y equals negative 31. So then y is equal to negative 31 over 2. So this value we solve for when we're looking at the x-intercept. This is the value of a, negative 31, 7, comma 0. Since a comma 0 is the x-intercept, and we found x to equal negative 31 over 7 at the x-intercept. And then for the y-intercept, this y value is the value of b, 0 comma negative 31 over 2. That's the y-intercept. So then the ratio of b over a is just negative 31 over 2 over negative 31 over 7, which is just equal to 7 over 2, since the 31s will cancel out, and so will the negative sign, which is equal to answer choice D. In the given system of equations, t is a constant. If the system has no solution, what is the value of t? So we can just start solving these two equations by elimination. So we'll multiply both sides of the second equation by negative 2. So on the left-hand side, we'll have negative 2ty, and then on the right-hand side, we'll have negative 1 minus 4x. And we'll just add that to the first equation. But we'll just reverse this so that the x terms cancel out. So we'll have 10y plus 2 equals 4x minus 6y. This is just the first equation here. So then on the left hand side, we'll just have 10y plus 2 minus 2ty, which equals negative 1, and then 4x minus 4x is just 0, and then we'll be left with negative 6y. Okay, and then in order for this system of equations to have no solutions, then we need to simplify down the elimination until we get an incorrect equation, or an equation that cannot be true. And in order to get that here, we need to somehow cancel out these y terms. So we can cancel out these y terms by setting t to some value such that 10y minus 2ty equals negative 6y. Because if this equaled negative 6y, then we would just cancel out the two negative 6y's, and we'd be left with an equation that says 2 equals negative 1, which is false, and that means the system has no solution. So we can solve for y here. So negative 2ty equals, after we move the negative 10y to the other side, we'll get negative 16y. Then we can cancel out the y here to get negative 2t equals negative 16. So then t has to equal 8. So if we plug this back into our original equation here, we'll see that 10y plus 2 minus 16y equals negative 1 minus 6y. So then 10y minus 16y is equal to negative 6y, and there's a 2 here, equals negative 1 minus 6y. And then since negative 6y is on both sides, we can cancel those out, and we'll just be left with 2 equals negative 1, which is obviously false. So for a t-value of 8, this system of equations has no solution. So the answer is 8. An isosceles right triangle has a hypotenuse of length 58 inches. What is the perimeter in inches of this triangle? So we have an isosceles right triangle whose hypotenuse is 58 inches. And since it is isosceles, it means the length of both of these sides is the same. So let's just say they're x units in length. So then using the Pythagorean theorem, we know that x squared plus x squared is equal to 58 squared. The sum of the square of the legs is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. So we can just combine these two like terms to get 2x squared equals 58 squared. And then we can divide both sides by 2 to get x squared equals 58 squared over 2. And then take the square root, so we get x equals 58 over square root 2. So the length of both of these legs is 58 over square root 2. Then we can also rationalize this denominator in order to get an answer that looks more like one of these answer choices. So we can do that by just multiplying the top and the bottom by the square root of 2. So x equals 58 square root 2 over root 2 times root 2 is just 2. And then this is just 29 times the square root of 2. So both of these x values are 29 times the square root of 2. So then the perimeter is just 29 square root 2 plus another 29 square root 2. That's both of these sides, plus the length of the hypotenuse, which is 58. And then 29 plus 29 is equal to 58. And then we just keep the square root 2 plus 58. So the perimeter is equal to this, which is equal to answer choice C. For the linear function f, the table shows 3 values of x and their corresponding values of f of x. Function f is defined by f of x equals ax plus b, where a and b are constants. What is the value of a minus b? So we have this table showing us values of x and their corresponding values of f of x. So we can use this to write the equation of a line using this form ax plus b. So in order to find the value of a, which is just the slope, since that's what's being multiplied with x, we can take 2 points and find the rise over the run between those 2 points. So we can use this point, 2, 0, and this point, 1, negative 64. So the change in x values is 2 minus 1, which will be our denominator, and then the rise will be 0 minus 64. This is 0 minus negative 64, which is just equal to 64 over 1. So that's the value of a, 64. Then to find the value of b, we can just plug in this value of a, and then plug in values of a point from this table. So our function f of x equals a, which is 64, times x plus b. But we know that for an x value of, say, 2, the f of x value is 0. So f of x is 0 when 64 times x equals 2 plus b. So then 0 equals 64 times 2 is 128 plus b. So then b is equal to negative 128. So now we have value of a and the value of b. So a, 64, minus b, negative 128, is equal to 192, which is answer choice D. Dataset A consists of 10 positive integers, less than 60. The list shown gives 9 of the integers from dataset A. The mean of these 9 integers is 42. If the mean of dataset A is an integer that is greater than 42, what is the value of the largest integer from dataset A? So to find the mean of this dataset, we just add up all the terms, 43 plus 45 plus 44 plus 43 plus 38 plus 39 plus 40 plus 46 plus 40. And then the 10th term that we are going to find is, we'll just say it's x. And then we just divide that by the total number of terms, which is 10. And this here, after we add all these together, we get 378 plus x, which is the 10th term, we don't know yet, over 10. So we're trying to find the value of x. We're trying to find the value of x because the problem says that the mean of these 9 integers is 42. But the mean of dataset A after we add the x, or the 10th integer, is greater than 42, which means that x has to be larger than 42. Okay, so now if we look at x, we know that it is an integer, or that the mean of dataset A is an integer, which means that in order for this mean right here to be an integer, this numerator has to be divisible by 10. And that's only possible when the numerator is a multiple of 10. And in order for this to be a multiple of 10, x has to be 2, because when in the ones place, x has to be 2, because when we add 2 in the ones place to 378, we'll get some multiple of 10. So we'll put 2 in the ones place. And we also know this has to be a 2-digit term, because these 10 terms have to be less than 60. So we know the ones place, but now the tens place we automatically also know, because this x value has to be larger than 42, because the mean of dataset A is larger than 42. But since the mean of these 9 integers is 42, we need a value larger than 42 to push the mean above 42. And since the x value has to be larger than 42 but less than 60, the only number that has a 2 in the ones place that is larger than 42 and less than 60 is 52. So x has to be 52. And if we look at these numbers, we can see that 52 is the largest of these 10 numbers. So the largest integer in dataset A is 52, which is the 10th term. For groups of 25 or more people, a museum charges $21 per person for the first 25 people, and $14 for each additional person. Which function f gives the total charge in dollars for a tour group with n people, where n is greater than or equal to 25? Okay, so to find f as a function of n, the number of people, we first considered the first 25 people. So the first 25 people are charged $21 per person. So the total amount charged for the first 25 people is 25 times 21. Then we have to add how much is charged for the rest of the people after the 25th person. So that would be 14, since people after the 25th are only charged 14 per person. And then n minus 25. Because the first 25 people were charged 21, but then the rest were charged 14. So we're not going to just multiply by n, we have to multiply by n minus 25, because only the people after the 25th are charged 14. So then we can just expand this out. So 25 times 21 is 525 plus 14n minus 14 times 25, which is 350. And then, so 14n and then 525 minus 350 is just 175. So this function represents the charge, the total charge for n people when n is greater than or equal to 25, which is just answer choice A. In triangles LMN and RST, angles L and R each have measure 60 degrees. LN equals 10 and RT equals 3. Which additional piece of information is sufficient to prove that triangle LMN is similar to triangle RST? So let's draw out these true triangles. So this is triangle LMN, and this is triangle RST. So angles L and R are both 60 degrees. So this and this are the same angle. LN and RT are 10 and 30. So LN is 10, RT is 30. What additional piece? Okay, so answer choice A says that MN equals 7 and ST equals 7. Now that doesn't prove that these two triangles are similar, because the fact that LN and RT are 10 and 30 suggests that the sides on this triangle are 1/3 the sides on this triangle, if they were similar. But if both of these are 7, then that means these two cannot possibly be similar triangles, because there's not some constant dilation factor to get from one triangle to another. So A is incorrect. MN is 7 and ST is 21. This is not enough information to prove that two triangles are similar, because the third side could be of any length. So it's not constrained enough by the fact that this angle is equal to that one and that these two sides are proportional. So B cannot be the answer either. The measures of angle M and S are 70 and 60 degrees respectively. So if M is 70 degrees and S is 60 degrees, and if these two triangles now cannot be similar, since M corresponds to angle S, but since they have different angles, they cannot be similar triangles. A similar triangle, two similar triangles have equal corresponding angles. So L would equal R, M would equal S, and N would equal T. So C is not correct either, which leaves us with D, but let's see why D is correct. So the measures of angle M and angle T are 70 and 50 respectively. So if angle M is 70 degrees, so let's say 70, and angle S is 50 degrees, and we know that angle L and R are both 60. Sorry, this angle T is 50 degrees, and we know that angle L is 60 degrees. We know the angle R is also 60 degrees. So I'm just redrawing the triangles here with the angles. So now that we know two angles in both triangles, we can solve for the third angle. So since all the angles in a triangle have to add up to 180, this angle here has to be 50 degrees. And the same in this case. 180 minus 60 is 120. 120 minus 50 is 70. So now we can see that all three of these triangles, when M and T are 70 and 50 degrees respectively, all three of the angles are the same, which means that would be enough information to show that LMN and RST are similar triangles. So D is the correct answer.